Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmaheti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So we begin today with verse number 13. So up to this point we saw that Sanjaya has come to Hastinapur, to the blind king, on the 10th day of the war, after Bhishma has fallen down, and now is narrating to the blind king, Dhritarashtra, what happened on the battlefield. We see, what we saw last time, that Duryodhana then comes and then addresses Drona and then mentions, look at the army on the other side, look at our great soldiers, mentions all these names. And we saw last time how it all indicated how nervous Duryodhana had become. In spite of having a larger army, in spite of having all these great warriors like Bhishma, Drona on his side, he wasn't sure, because he knew somewhere in the corner of his heart that a lot of people who are fighting from my side are not really doing it out of any great love for me. Some of them have been almost compelled to do so, like Bhishma and Drona, based on some of the idea of the duties and commitments they had made. And some others had just come with mercenaries, with the hope and the promise that Duryodhana had made them, if you fight on our side, we will give you this and we'll give you that. So it was for personal gain. On the other hand, on the Pandavas side, although their army was a little bit smaller than this side, they were all very committed. And it was very clear because they had come there not simply because they were forced, they were never forced, that it was their sense of commitment to dharma, that we are fighting for the right cause. So there was real motivation on the other side, not much motivation on his own side. And so we saw how nervous Duryodhana was. Now to then generate some confidence in him, because remember, Bhishma was a grandfather not only of the Pandavas, of the Kauravas as well. So Bhishma has seen even Duryodhana as a little baby. So when he saw, sure, he knew that Duryodhana is on the wrong side of history, but still, he was still his grandchild. And so just to generate some confidence in him, to kind of give him some courage, on verse 12, Bhishma blows the first conch. And we saw that last time. Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuru vruddhav pitamaha simhanadam vinadyochaihi shankham dadmhau pratapavan. That powerful oldest of the Kauravas, Bhishma, the grandsire, in order to cheer Duryodhana, now sounded aloud a lion roar and blew his conch. So it's good to remember this, that the first conch was blown from the Kauravas side. And so this is to indicate that they are really the aggressors. They are the ones who are itching for a fight. And so they are the one who blow the conch first. Now let's look at verse 13. Tatashankhaschcha bhairyascha panavanaka gomukhaha sahasaivabhyahanyanta sashabdastumulo bhavat. Then following Bhishma, conches and kettle drums, tabors, trumpets and cow horns blared forth suddenly from the Kaurava side, and the noise was tremendous. So all these are different names, different. So some blow conches and all the, I don't know the details of all these different instruments that they blew, but this was a formal beginning a kind of indication to say, we are ready. We are ready to go. Almost like in Olympics, when you have these sprint events, it's like get, set, go, 1, 2, 3, all these things kind of you get ready. So these conches are a little bit like that for the beginning of the war. And then look at verse 14. Tatashvetair hayair yukte mahati syandane sthitau madhava pandavaschaiva divyau shankhau pradadmatuhu. Then also Madhava and Pandava, stationed in their magnificent chariot, yoked with white horses, blew their divine conches with a furious noise. Sometimes some of the commentators have even tried to look at these specific words used to show what kind of or how much that sound was made. And so while you see in verse 13, when all these conches and other things were blown from the Kaurava side, the sound was tumulaha, that means tremendous. And now when Krishna and Arjuna blow their conches, we read that with a furious noise, with a great sound, pradadmatuhu, that's the Sanskrit word. It's also significant that the horses on Arjuna's chariot were white in color. Now, oftentimes in the tradition, white is a symbol of purity. And here it stands, therefore, that, and then some of you who have already studied the Kathopanishad know there is a chariot imagery there, in which, we won't go into the details of that, but in which the horses are likened to sense objects. Senses. The road is the sense objects. And so the idea here is, Arjuna here is the symbol of purity, with preponderance of sattva in him, and then he is come here with a rightful cause. And so the white horses yoked to his chariot are a symbol of that. Verse 15. Panchajanyam rishikesho devadattam dhananjayah paundram dadmau mahashankham bhima karma vrukodaraha. Rishikesha blew the Panchajanya, Dhananjaya, the Devadatta, and Vrikodara, the doer of terrific deeds, his large conch, Poundra. Again, some of these conches, just like I imagine people have their pets and pets have dogs, pets have names. So similarly, some of these conches had specific names. And they were not just conches, you just go into a market and buy one. If you look up the history, either in the Mahabharata or some associated texts, many of these conches have a kind of a backstory of their own. For instance, the conch that Arjuna had, named Devadatta, there's another story behind it, that was a conch Arjuna had received from Indra, Devadatta, given by Deva, the king of the gods. It's interesting also that from the Pandava side, just like from the Kauravas, the first conch was blown by Bhishma. In the Pandava side, it was blown by Krishna and then Arjuna. In later on, in the 11th chapter, when Krishna will tell Arjuna, he says that Mayaiva nihata purvameva, that when and of course the story will come, I kind of, what do they say? No, I forget the word. So, there's some word I'm looking for, I'm not remembering. Huh?
Spoiler alert?
No, it's like if you are supposed to tell what's happening before. What? Huh? Yeah, it's like a mystery story, and then you kind of tell the solution. Huh? Spoilers. Actually, remind spoiler. Spoiler alert. Of course, all of you already know the Gita story. So later on, in the 11th chapter, by which time Arjuna has been already said, I'm not going to fight, and he's having all the dilemma. And then in the 11th chapter, Krishna says, in that cosmic form, the Vishwarupa Darshana he says, I have already killed all these people. Mayaiva nihata purvameva. Already done it. Nimitta matra bhava savya sachin. Oh, Arjuna, you just be an instrument. In other words, whatever happens really happens either objectively, we could say nature accomplishes things. In a theistic way, it all happens through God's will. And whatever we are doing, none of us is doing really anything. We are just instruments. What makes us think that we are doing is our own ego. And so what Krishna will tell Arjuna later, that I've already, all the people that are going to be killed in this war, it's already going to happen. You just be an instrument. And so some people connect that with the incarnation, blowing the conch. So by the very act of blowing the conch in the beginning from the side of the Pandavas, Krishna has already, that sound has already kind of determined the fate of the people who are fighting against them. Verse 16. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Sugho Shamani Pushpakau. King Yudhishthira, son of Kunti, blew the conch named Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva, their Sughosha and Mani Pushpaka. Again, the other Pandavas blew their own conches. It's interesting that Yudhishthira name is specifically appended with son of Kunti. Well, all of these were sons of Kunti really, not just Yudhishthira. But the reason that son of Kunti, Kunti Putra is kind of attached in these words to Yudhishthira's name, because until the last moment, he was the one not wanting to fight. In fact, those of you who have read the story know that till the last moment, he wanted to make a compromise to avoid the battle. He said, just give us 5 villages and that would be enough. They said no. Just give us 5 homes to stay in. Duryodhana said no. So things had reached such a point that there was no other alternative. And it's good to remember that. So that it wasn't just Krishna saying, just go and fight, as if it's something wonderful, something great. Every avenue was tried, and there was just no possibility of peace. And so Yudhishthira, right till the end, was most reluctant. Only when his mother, Kunti, she was the one, she says, no. It's interesting, with all this war and killing and everything that happened, there were 2 characters in the Mahabharata who were absolutely uncompromising. And that is Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, and of course Draupadi. And Draupadi, of course, we can understand how she was humiliated in front of everybody. So she was absolutely mad. And she just wanted a justice to be done. And Kunti, who throughout the story comes across as a very mild-mannered, calm, peace-loving lady, and she is so furious that this was happened to her daughter-in-law. So she is insisting that there has to be a battle, that this cannot be something that can be pushed under the carpet with a kind of a compromise. In fact, and this is not a part of Gita, it comes earlier in the Mahabharata, when Krishna decided to go as a messenger of peace, to try to bring some peace negotiation to try to avoid war. Kunti, who was really related to him as his aunt, so she called Krishna. And she was worried. If Krishna goes and succeeds in bringing peace, then she wanted this battle. So she told Krishna that this Yudhishthir, who has been wanting all peace and everything, she says, doing too many worship and rituals and all of that his brain has become little soft. So don't listen to what he's saying. Justice has to be done. In a Kshatriya family, the daughter-in-law has been humiliated and dishonored in front of everybody. There has to be consequences. And Krishna, who of course knew past, present, and future, he knew what was to come. So he promises her, I'm going to go and try my best to bring peace. But I know it's not going to happen. So you will have your war. Not to worry. And of course, but he did. He did try, but knowing, of course, what was to happen. And so that's why it's interesting here that in this verse, in verse 16, Yudhishthira had been put as Kunti Putra to suggest that it was only the wish of his mother that he most reluctantly comes to war, just because his mother said, you have got to do it, in obedience to his mother's wishes. Verse 17. Kashyascha parameshvasaha shikhandi cha maharatha drishtadyumno viratascha satyakischa parajitaha. The expert bowman, king of Kashi, and the great warrior Shikhandi, Drishtadyumna and Virata, and the unconquered Satyaki. Verse 18. Drupado Draupade Yascha Sarvashav Prithivi Pate Saubhadrascha Mahabahu Shankhan Dadmhuv Prithak Prithak. O Lord of Earth, Drupada and the sons of Draupadi and the mighty armed son of Subhadra all also blew each his own conch. So one by one, all of these conches were blown from the Pandavas' side. There are two things to note here. One is, if you look at the description given in verse 13, Sahasaiva abhyahanyanta, the sound which is tumula, tremendous, when the Kauravas side blew their conches. But Sahasaiva, in like all at once, while in contrast you see all the conches that were blown on the Pandavas side were one after the other, each very systematically, a kind of an indication that these people were very disciplined, that it was very orderly. While those on the Kauravas side, there wasn't much organization. Everyone wanted to just come for their personal glory. So everyone just kind of blew whatever they had in their hand. And the sound that time was tumula, means tremendous. But look at the sound when the Pandavas blew. It says, and the terrific noise resounding throughout heaven and earth rent the hearts of Dhritarashtra's party. Verse 19. So while that sound was simply tremendous, this sound is positively affected the hearts, that they were really terrified just seeing the sound. Again, indicating the psychological condition of the people on either side of the battle. Verse 20. Atha vyavasthitan drishtva dhartarashtran kapidhvajaha pravritte shastra sampate dhanurudyamya pandavaha rishikesham tada vakyam idamaha mahipate. Then, O Lord of Earth, seeing Dhritarashtra's party standing marshalled and the shooting about to begin, the Pandava, whose ensign was the monkey, raising his bow, said the following words to Krishna. Each flag had every flag. Nowadays we have these national flags and different colors and different designs. So the flag on Arjuna's, this thing, there was a monkey, indicating again of Hanuman. So wherever there is this Hanuman, victory is a symbol of strength and valor. One other interesting thing you will see is, so the word Raja, the king, comes twice here already. Once it comes in the second verse, where Duryodhana is referred to as Raja. Drishtva tu Pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastada Acharyam Upasangamya Raja Vachanam Abravit. This Raja said. So referring to Duryodhana, Raja means a king. And now in this verse here, verse 16, Yudhishthir also is referred to as Raja. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro. And the idea here is this. Yudhishthir is actually the Raja, a real king by right. That's why this whole battle is all about. He was the real king, that it belonged to him. While the Raja that is referred to as Duryodhana in verse 2 was what he thought he was. Actually, he was not even a Raja. His actually father, the blind king Dhritarashtra, was officiating as king in place of Yudhishthir. And he was the prince really, but he, because his father was old, he was blind, Duryodhana was kind of running the whole show and had already begun to see himself as the king. So both of them have been referred to as Raja, but the one was the real Raja and one was kind of a self-proclaimed Raja, so to speak. So then this is what Arjuna says. Arjuna Uvacha. Verse 21. Senayor ubhayor madhye ratham sthapaya mechuta yavadetan niriksheham yodhukaman avasthitan kairmaya sahayodhavyam asmin ranasamudyame. Arjuna said, place my chariot, O Achyuta, between the two armies, that I may see those who stand here prepared for war. On this eve of battle, let me know with whom I have to fight. So this is again a well-known part of this text, that Arjuna then asks Krishna, place my chariot in the middle so that I can see with whom I have to fight. This was not a mystery. This was not some kind of a blind date. Go for a war and yes, today we'll see with whom I'm going to fight. They knew, of course, who was on the other side. But sometimes we know that something may be the thing that we know, it's in our head, we know it, but when we actually see it, it somehow becomes more real. It's a little bit like, let's say, so if someone loves ice cream, chocolate ice cream, let's say, and you know that today there's going to be ice cream for lunch, and it's your favorite thing. So you know it's going to be there, but it hasn't yet arrived. And so when you are actually sitting for lunch and there is actually in front of you this ice cream just waiting to be eaten, it suddenly becomes more real. It's no longer simply an idea, even when you know that it's going to be there for lunch. So that's essentially the situation here. Arjuna knew with whom he was going to fight. He knew everything. Everyone knew everything. There was no surprises here. But still, he wanted to say, And what had happened is, as we shall see, there were these misgivings about the battle. And Arjuna is going to express what those misgivings were later on. But now, being there right at the moment, conches have been blown on either side. Any moment the battle is about to begin. And out of the blue, Arjuna says, let me see with whom I'm going to fight. And seeing the number of soldiers, that there were really thousands on either side, Krishna really could have taken the chariot anywhere in the middle, anywhere, and parked it there. But then he goes and parks it right in front of Bhishma and Drona, just the kind of people he wanted Arjuna to see. So let's look at it. Verse 23. Yotsyamanān aveksheham ya etetra samagataha dhartarashtrasya durbuddher yuddhe priyachikirshavaha. For I desire to observe those who are assembled here for fight, wishing to please the evil-minded Duryodhana by taking his side on this battlefield. So it's pretty clear. Priya Chikir Shavaha, wanting to please Duryodhana. In other words, again, look at some of the adjectives that I used. That have the people come on the other side convinced by the cause that they are fighting for, or that their main purpose, what draws them to the fight, is just to please Duryodhana. Because if Duryodhana is pleased, he is going to reward them. And so just make your boss happy and then you get the benefit. Whether or not, in other words, if someone is working somewhere and they want to advance in their career, what gets priority? Is it making your boss happy so that it'll help you climb up your corporate ladder? Or also be concerned about the ethical and moral nature of the work? So, and again, different people will make different choices. Some people may be very concerned about the ethical implications of the place and the way things are done and so on. And other people would say, I just want to please my boss so that I'll be benefited. And so that's the Priya Chikir Shavaha. I want to see these people who have come on the battlefield to please Duryodhana. In other words, not very sure whether they have even thought about whether this war has any ethical component to it, or they just want to have a personal benefit from this war. Sanjaya Uvacha, Sanjaya said, verse 24 and 25. Eva mukto rishikesho gudakeshena bharata senayor ubhayor madhye स्थापयित्वा रथोत्तमम् भीष्मद्रोण प्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षितान् उवाच पार्थ पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरुनिति. Sanjaya said, O Bharata, commanded thus by Gudakesha, Rishikesh drove that grandest of chariots to a place between the two hosts, facing Bhishma, Drona, and all the rulers of the earth, and then spoke thus, Behold, O Partha, all the Kurus gathered here. All the Kurus meaning all these, the main warriors on the Kaurava side. Verse 26. Tatra pashyat sthitan Partha pitrnath pitamahan acharyan matulan bhratrin putran pautran sakhims tatha shvashuran surudaschaiva senayorubhayorapi. Then saw Partha stationed there in both the armies, grandfathers, fathers-in-law, and uncles, brothers and cousins, his own and their sons and grandsons, and comrades, teachers, and other friends as well. So clearly this is a war in the family, so he obviously found a lot of people connected with him. As there was a grandfather, teachers, and uncles, and all of them, so on. But again, it's not simply Arjuna's relationships with these people. The idea is that in war, every soldier is somebody's relative. So it's not, so even if the people on the other side may not have been Arjuna's uncle, but they were somebody's uncle. And so sometimes, and this is as much true of the battle in those days as it is true of the wars that are occurring right now, even at this very moment in the world, that sometimes we just reduce the casualties in war to just numbers. We just hear about, we just see nowadays, every day you see some bombs are thrown, the destruction of property, and then we say X number of people died. And then at some time they'll add to that, among these were so many were children, so many were women. So we just have a number, and sometimes about whether they were children or women, that's all. But it's good to remember, even if one person dies, it's not just that one person. There is a network that if that one person, the family is involved, the friends are involved. So if one person dying, a lot more people are affected by that one death. And so that sometimes, that gets kind of in the background when things were just reduced to numbers, that so many buildings were destroyed and so many people died. So it's good to remember that none of us, as they say, we are not an island, that we are all connected. All these connections we have with the world around us. Anything happens to us, people around are affected as well. And that's really what Arjuna is seeing. And Arjuna is affected by that. There's what makes a little bit of a problem is this. Arjuna is, yes, affected. Arjuna, with this sattvika nature, with his white horses and a very idealistic person, he knows, and this is not the first battle Arjuna is fighting. So he knows what battle is. He knows what killing is. He knows what death means. But this is probably, it's not often that Arjuna went to battle earlier and saw his own grandfather, his own teacher, his own uncle. So that was a little bit unusual. And so while he's affected by the harm that wars do to society in general, he's more specifically affected here because among those who are going to get killed is not just society in general, but his own people. Because we don't, again, this is not the first time Arjuna has gone to war. He has fought many battles throughout the story in the Mahabharata. You see a great conqueror, the best archer in the whole world. So, and we don't see him hesitating for those wars. Even those wars, people did die. And he was just fine with it. Being a Kshatriya, he fought for a just cause. He just didn't go about killing people for his own satisfaction. He fought for a certain principle. That's true. But still, even then, there were deaths. But what made the difference now is not simply that this is not just like any other battle that he had fought before, but here the word that he'll use in the subsequent verses was swajanam. Jana is people. Swajanam, these are my people. And again, that's where you could say the first veil of ignorance comes in. And that's something that is common to all of us. We speak about human beings, a human family. True, very true. But even in this, whatever number of billions of people, human beings that are on the planet, and we might say, I'm a part of the human family, I love everyone, or I am concerned about the state of the world, the state of other human beings. And that will be a very genuine concern. But we will see that our concern may be very genuine, very real, but there are also, in these billions of people in the world, there are also people in our own circle with whom we are more closely connected. Our relatives, our family, our friends, and then we are more affected, kind of more closely affected if people in our circle are hurt, than if somebody in some country whose name we haven't even heard of, we have never been there, we have no intention of going there, and we see, oh, there is this bomb blast occurred and 10 people died, and then that's the first time you are hearing the name of that place. And you might still feel bad, but you will feel much more bad if that bomb had gone somewhere in the city you live in or in the neighborhood where you were, and you knew the people who were affected by it. So there is a little bit of a difference that all of us have. In spite of our kind of concern for all living beings, somehow there is some extra concern, or more affected we are when among those people, there are those who I see as swajana. They are my own, they are connected me, they are related to me in some way. And that is what is going to happen to Arjuna now. That yes, he's seeing in front of him all these people, and then he recognizes they are related to me. And then let's read some little bit more. Arjuna Vacha, verse 28 and 29. Drishtvemam swajanam Krishna yuyutsum samupasthitam sidanti mamagatrani mukham cha parishusyati vepathuscha sharire me roma harshascha jayate gandivam sramsate hastat tvakchaiva paridahyate. Arjuna said, "Seeing, O Krishna, these my kinsmen gathered here, eager for fight, my limbs fail me, and my mouth is parched up. I shiver all over, and my hair stands on end. The bow Gandiva slips from my hand, and my skin burns." You can see, it's not things going on only in Arjuna's mind. There must be something very much happening in the mind that you can see how it's affecting. You are able to see the physical manifestation of the kind of a churning that is occurring in his mind. Once again, we know the body-mind connection, that body and mind, and as the Gita will make clear as we continue with this study, that they both are seen as material. That the mind is a very subtle matter and the body is gross matter. But both are material. And because they both are material, they can act and react upon each other. And we know that from our own experience in life. When the mind is severely affected by something, positively and negatively, it shows itself. When we are happy, happiness is the state of the mind. But oftentimes, when you are very happy, especially when you are just joyful, it shows itself in the expression on our face. It shows itself on the body. When we are sad. So again, sadness is the state of the mind. But sometimes that sadness can't be hidden. Sometimes it will show itself even physically. So body and mind are connected. In fact, today, they say majority of our illnesses are psychosomatic in nature. That there is both a mind has a role to play even in physical illnesses, and the body does play a role even in mental illnesses. So the two are not easy to separate together. There is nothing purely physical or purely mental. So it's a kind of a shifting boundary, or if there is any boundary at all, between just physiology and psychology. Although we do make that distinction, and there are different specialists in different fields, but very soon, the deeper we go into it, we find that it's a very shifting boundary. And so we see here in this verse how just being there and just seeing the people on the other side, how affected Arjuna is. Verse 30. न च शक्नोम्यवस्थातुं भ्रमतीव च मे मनः निमित्तानि च पश्यामि विपरीतानि केशव. Neither, O Keshava, can I stand upright. My mind is in a whirl, and I am seeing adverse omens. So we will stop here right now, and then next time we will see. Arjuna then will expand on what he thinks, how he is being affected, and he will then try to express of why it's a bad idea to continue to fight. And then the chapter, as you know, will end with him saying, I'm not going to fight. So right now, the chariot is there in the middle of the two armies. Arjuna has seen for himself who are the actual people. He's able to see the conches have already been blown. As soon as the battle starts, immediately killing is going to begin. Sooner or later, Arjuna has no doubt that he is going to win. There is no fear in that sense. But he knows that his victory will mean killing of these swajana. That's the word that comes here. Killing of my people. Not just killing of unknown soldiers, but killing of my own people. And that's what has him completely helpless. And so we will see what Arjuna thinks a little bit more deeply when we meet next week. But what we have seen up to this point, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Hari Om, Swamiji. Swamiji, if we see that there was war then, there's war now, there'll likely be war in the future, what is the purpose or attempt for us then to try to seek peace in the material world? Is there any reason for us to try?
Oh, of course we should try. I think just as there is impulse towards war, an impulse for peace and harmony is equally important. And one side or the other is going to win at different points in history. Sometimes the effort to bring about peace and harmony will succeed and a war can be averted. And sometimes this effort will not succeed and there will be war. And we see that throughout history. There have been people who have tried to bring peace negotiations and tried to avoid war, and sometimes they have succeeded, and other times not. But I don't think it's something that will ever be unanimously decided. I mean, nothing in the world is unanimously decided. Always people with different ways of thinking. And so there will always be people who will just want to go to war and fight. And there will also be people who would want to avoid it. And that's always going to be the case. And there'll be some other people who might try to do something else. So this immense diversity we see in the world will always exist. But then what is my duty? That is what we have to ask. So those of us who think about these things will want to say what is, and that's really what ultimately going to be Arjuna's problem. What is my duty in this situation? And that's a kind of a problem that all of us have. That the world is really too big for any of us to change. That there are people of all kinds of different tendencies. My question would be, when I am in the midst of a situation, I may not be able to influence the thinking of people on this side or that side or any side. But what should be my thinking? How I should deal with it? What is my duty? And that's why, as in the later verses, in the later chapters, the idea of swadharma. What is my duty in a situation? And that's what people who think will even raise this question. And this may not, and I hope it doesn't surprise you, that very few people think. Most people, if you want to put a positive spin on it, people say, go with the flow. What going with the flow simply means is, don't think too much. It means that just do what you feel like doing. And that's the kind of a modern idea about freedom. Oh, I can do whatever I want. We think we are doing whatever we want, but really, that's not freedom. That I already have existing biases and prejudices in my heart. I already have strong likes and dislikes. I already have love and hatred in my heart. So doing whatever I want really means just submitting myself to these kind of primal instincts of love and hatred, prejudices, likes and dislikes, and just doing it. And that's what most people do most of the time. And that's what spiritual life really means. That not allowing our life to become mechanical, to be ready to question things that we may have taken always for granted. To question and say, why? Should I be doing this or should I be doing that? If I should do this, why should I do this? Or why should I do that? Only when we begin to question, then we may discover that certain things that we would have otherwise done just by the way we are temperamentally built, we might say, no, I need to say, I shouldn't do this. Now that's difficult because over the years and maybe over a number of lives, we have built up certain kind of a muscle memory, even muscle memory of the mind. So the mind kind of is sort of programmed to act in a certain way. And for a mind to act in the way it has already acted in the past, it's a lot easier. But to then say, no, I'm going to do things differently, you're almost like creating new pathways in your brain. And that's hard work. It's like if you're going hiking and there's already a road made by someone, it's easy to hike along a path that already exists. And if someone says, no, I just don't want to go, I want to go in some different way, then you need to kind of make your way, and that's going to take time, that's difficult. Most people just want to say, just go on the beaten track, so to speak. So throughout our own personal past, we have already created these pathways of reacting in very predictable ways to predictable situations. And if we don't think, if we don't pause to question, that's what we will keep on doing. And if we keep on doing what we have always done and then say, why my life is not changing? Why is there no transformation? How will there be transformation? I'm just going about doing what I've already done in the last 50 years. And so it just kind of, it's like that, what do you say that sometimes you have this mice kind of walking, but you're on the same spot? Yeah, it's kind of, you're walking, but you're on, okay, think about a treadmill in a way, you could say. That we have an illusion we are walking, but we are really, really on the same spot. So this is a little bit like that, that we think, oh, I'm doing things and I should be advancing, but really I'm doing things in a way I've always done and I'm just really not moving. So in order to then advance, in order to progress, now I'm not saying everything in our life has to be changed. No, there are a lot of things we are already doing right. So if we question and find, yes, this is what I have been doing and this is the right way to do and I should keep on doing that. But if I discover that I have been reacting in a certain way, doing things in a certain way, but that may not be the best way to do it. There is a better way to do it. If I discover that, then I should have the courage to say, okay, even though I have done something in a particular way for the last 50 years of my life, I'm not going to change. Because only if we change where change is needed, then we will see some progress. Then we will see some transformation. And the Gita is really for that. That don't be afraid to question. Don't take anything for granted. Don't follow anything blindly. And all these questions will be discussed as we go forward.
Almost every person or every scene in the Gita is supposed to give you a life lesson. So I have a hard time with Bhishma Pitama and Dronaji's actions. What are we to learn from that? I mean, I know they were bound by tradition and all, but if we are in such a situation, what would we be doing, right?
Yeah, good. Please sit. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a complicated question, and then we don't have to go into the details of the story of Mahabharata, except to know that certain commitments due to loyalty bound Bhishma on a side that he was not happy with. He knew that the Pandavas were right, but he somehow felt compelled for some vow that he had taken to then abide by that. And similar situation can come in our lives as well. That what do we do if there is a conflict of duties? Because sometimes it will happen in our lives that we cannot be in two places at the same time, and I'm required to do one thing and be at one place. There is some duty of mine that compels me to do that, and I'm required to do something else and be at some other place, and that's also a duty. And so clearly we have to choose between the two. And therefore there is such a thing as a priority among duties as well. Now that priority is set by ourselves. We have to decide which duty is more important and which duty is less important. Think about it this way. When we drive, traffic, we all abide by the traffic rules. We have to do that. But then sometimes you might hear a cop behind you or an ambulance. Now an ambulance, even if it's red, the ambulance doesn't have to stop. Or the cops, if they are chasing someone, they will not stop at this red light or something. They will just go. They will not follow the rules. Now we might say, oh, they are breaking the rules. Correct. Now, so there, they have a duty to obey traffic rules. But their other duty is, let's say there is something, or in a case of an ambulance, a person's life is to be saved. So, obeying traffic rules is one rule, but saving someone's life, that's another requirement. So at that time, the ambulance make the decision, rightly so, and we all agree with it, that they don't have to follow that rule. They can go the other way. Now, this is a rather simple example, but in our lives, such complicated situations can come. And that's something that had happened in the life of Bhishma and Drona. And clearly, in retrospect, when we look back, we can say, wrong choice. And even these were great people, but they made wrong choices, not just at the war, even at the disrobing of Draupadi. Everyone just kept quiet and allowed that to happen. Everyone blundered, including the Pandavas. The only person who did the right duty in that time was Draupadi herself. When she found that none of these fellows were coming to her rescue as they should have, then she said, just praise to Krishna. And that's what a spiritual seeker would do. That ultimately, the only person to turn to is the divine being. And so we have these different levels of duties. If we see ourselves as spiritual seekers, it might be interesting to ask ourselves that I am a spiritual seeker, I am a devotee, but in my list of priorities in my life, my duty toward my spiritual life, my duty towards this, my duty toward that, we all of us have different, many kinds of duties. And so we have to say, where is my duty towards God, duty towards spiritual life in that category? So if there is any conflict of duties in my life, we obviously will choose the more important duty than the others. And again, in this case, Bhishma and Drona, they are all great people. Who am I to judge them? But it looks like in retrospect, they made a bad choice. And somehow and the worst part is, they knew it was a bad choice and they still stuck with it, which makes it even worse. But then if they hadn't made that choice, we wouldn't have had the Gita. So.
Thank you, Swamiji. Swamiji, my question is, was it like Arjuna, who was such a sattvic person, was it his bad karma that led him into this situation where he had to kill his own family. Because even when and this is where the boundaries of good and bad that we discussed the last time come in, because even when I examine my life, like terrible things that may have happened in the past have also shifted my life in a direction that has uplifted me in ways that I never thought. So things that I thought were bad karma or bad things actually in retrospect turned out to be the most incredible things. So how when we're in that situation, do we think about that? Like, how do we kind of think about good and bad karma when we're in that battle?
Different people will think about it in different way. That's why I said we have to pause and question what we do. And it's not necessarily karma itself, but situations occur in the lives of all of us. But how we react to them, how we respond to them, is based on the samskaras that we have. And the samskaras that we have are generated by our past thoughts and actions. So we use the word karma, but it's not really. Karma simply means an experience of sukha and dukkha. So now that Arjuna is experiencing this tremendous sorrow in the situation he is put in, that is the result of his karma, you could say, the dukkha that he is experiencing. But the situation itself is not the result of karma. Situation is, things are happening in the world. How I will react to them will depend on my samskaras. And then, whether I just follow my samskaras mechanically, as most people will do, but questioning would mean, even if my samskaras are pushing me in one direction to act in one way, my questioning would be and say, my samskaras, my tendencies are trying to tell me to do this, but I have paused, I have thought about it, and I have decided that's not the right thing to do. So even if inwardly I am being pushed to do something, the power of the will is such that that's what willpower is. That even if I am kind of inclined to do something, the willpower should be strong enough to say, I've thought about it, that's not what I'm going to do. It's difficult to go against one's impulses, but sometimes we may have to. Not always. Some of the impulses may be good. But if some of our impulses are taking us in a self-destructive direction, then we should have that tremendous amount of courage and strength to then, and that's what last Sunday when we spoke about Uparati, the pulling back. Even if my tendencies are pushing me to do something, can I just pull back and say no? Or it's like, if at all you'd ever drive a chariot, I doubt any of you will have to, and if your horses are taking you in one direction, then you need strength to pull them back and then direct them. No, this is the road to take, not that road. A little bit like that.
Swamiji, as you were teaching, what I find, like Arjuna, we are torn between a lot of duties. Duty towards your own self, duty towards your family, society, all this. But this duty words, somehow I feel it's a very negative, that duty means you have to do it, not what you wish to do it or what you want to do it. Mm-hmm. So could you please clear my mind about this duty, because somehow I do not like the word duty.
Duty. Yeah, okay, good. Doing something out of a sense of duty is better than not doing anything at all. So it's good. So duty can be seen in positive light. But if you think about it deeply, and as you rightly pointed out, duty could also mean that, oh, this I have to do because it's like oftentimes we say, it's my duty. In other words, if I had any say in the matter, if I had some freedom, I would rather not do it. But what to do? It's my duty. And so a better way to do things in life is because I enjoy doing it. I love it. That's what I want to do. That would be truly acting out of freedom. But until our mind and the will become purified and strong. Duties can sometimes be helpful also. That is, until, if I just say, I want to do out of freedom, and the mind isn't become clear and transparent yet, my sense of freedom will take me in any direction. At least duty will put some barriers and say, no, this is where you need to go. So in the initial stages, all of us carrying out our duty well can be helpful. And if we can do it in the Gita, later on, in the later word chapters, there is one place Krishna will say, Karyam ityeva yat karma, that doing what is good, doing what is right, because it is good and right, not for any other reason. Because a lot of our actions that we do, there is motives behind it. At the very least, either some material benefit from it, or at least recognition or praise, and so on. So, can we continue to do what is right, continue to do what is good, just because it is right or good? Not expecting anything from anyone. That's one way to do it. And the other way, that also will be described in the Gita later, would be to do things out of love for God. That do things as an offering to God. So either way, those are in some ways better ways to do things than simply out of a sense of duty. But until we reach that state of inner discipline, duties in the initial stages can be helpful. But Swami Vivekananda comes very strongly about this idea of duty. He says that, in fact, he says, duty is the midday sun scorching the very soul of human beings. And then he gives example. I mean, think about our life. Think about our life. We are never without duties. When we are very little babies, of course, we don't even know what's going on around us. So that's the best part of our life in some ways. But as soon as we become a little bit, some understanding, then we are immediately told, as a son or a daughter, this is your duty. When you go to school, as a student, this is your duty. And then, of course, when you become parts of different groups, then that's your duty. Then when you grow up, you start your family, then you have a duty as a father, as a mother, as a husband or a wife. And then you grow up, and then further down, you have a duty to your neighborhood, your duty to your country, you have a duty to the world, your duty to nature, your duty to planets. It just doesn't end. And then you say, well, now the children have grown up. When then as a grandparent, you have a duty towards your grandchildren. It never ends. And then you go to a nursing home. Then you say, oh, but all these people who are serving you, you have a duty to be kind and understanding to your nurses and your doctors. It never ends. And until the day we just die, just different duties coming at different stages. And so when you look at it that way, it just like, can we free ourselves from the whole notion of duty? And the way to do that would be then to, first of all, have some basic ethical values and principles, have a strong willpower, never do anything impulsively, be willing to pause and stop and ask that I will do what goes with my principles and values. Then we can work truly out of freedom, truly out of joy. So yeah, it's a good question, and the Gita will have a lot going forward to discuss about duty, my duty, and so on. Swadharma. There's a lot of discussion about Swadharma that will come. So we will come to that as we go forward. So we'll stop here today. So when we begin next week, we will start with verse number 31. Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.